So now it's time to do the pleats on the shoulders. Don't worry if your marks from when you cut out the pieces have faded at all, because it's easy enough to put them back in. So what you will need is something with a straight edge. So it might already have markings on it, but if it doesn't, then you can use one of these is useful. I'm going to use both because I think this will be easier for you to see the measurements that I'm using. So the first thing that you want to do is look at, on page 8, there are two diagrams. So the first one will show you the measurements of the pleats, and the second one shows you how the pleats are laid out on the front and back bodices. The front bodice will have one pleat, and then there is a shoulder seam, and then the back half will have the large pleat and a small pleat. So to measure these, this is the front half and this is the back. We're going to first measure our small pleat on the front bodice. So if we just quickly look at the diagram again, you'll see that there's a shoulder seam and then you have the black and white diamonds. So if you look over here, black and white diamonds, and it's going to be 4 centimeters, and there is a half a centimeter spacing between the pleats. So just sounds more complicated than it is. Just take half a centimeter, go from the shoulder seam towards onto the front bodice, and you'll probably already see a mark there from when you did the cutting out, but if it's faded, just put another little mark, and then go to the top of the shoulder seam, and on the same side make another mark half a centimeter in. And now what we're going to do is join this mark to this mark with our straight edge. So I've connected the two marks, and now we measure our front pleat. So if you look again on the diagram, you can see it's going to be 4 centimeters from the spacing. So I have this at 4 centimeters. You just place that on the line that you've just created. And again, you might see the mark that you made earlier on, or it might have faded. Just put a new little mark. Check your mark at the top, should be 4 centimeters. And now we're going to join that line. Okay, so that's our front pleat all marked out. And now we just do the two on the back. So if I pull this over, you might still see the marks from earlier, but we'll just put them in again so that they're clear. There's going to be the large pleat and the small pleat. So what I'm going to do is the first line of the shoulder seam itself, sorry, is one of the lines of the large pleats. So if I just show you this again, sorry, you can see that line there, the dark circles, you don't actually have to draw in because it is the seam. And then the white circle is the other edge of the large pleat. So we'll go down 6 centimeters. Might see our mark, but just put it there again. Go to the top in 6 centimeters from the shoulder seam and make our mark. And now I'm going to draw a line between the two. So that's our large pleat drawn in here. And now we only have one pleat to go. So it's going to be 0.5 centimeters spacing, top and bottom, make a mark and draw your line, and then do a 4 centimeter pleat from that new line that you're going to draw, and then connect those lines. Okay, so now that's our 3 pleats. We have on the front 1 pleat, a bit of space, the shoulder seam to here is 6 centimeters, which makes our big pleat, the bit of spacing, and then we have our 3rd pleat, which is on the back. So now it's time to put the pleats together, and we'll start with the small pleat on the front. The two lines here are going to go together similar to how you would do a dart, but make sure that the fabric is going wrong sides together because we want the pleat to stick out on the outside. So the easiest way to do this, I find, is if you pull both sides together, and what you want to do, if I show you like this, is you'll stick one pin in either end of the line, and then around the back stick it so it comes out that end of the line. And if you do that on both sides, then your lines are like this. And the next thing to keep that all in place is starting from one side, making sure the pins are all facing in the same direction. We're going to put it through the line on one side and check that the pin is going through the line on the other side. And if it isn't, you can take the pin out and then just slightly twist the fabric back or forth until when you stick the pin through you can see that it aligns properly. So we'll put that through and it should come back through the line on the other side. And what we'll do is we'll keep putting pins, maybe 2 or 3 more along this line, and then remove these 2 end pins that we're just keeping it in place for the time being. And then we will go and we will sew along that white line of chalk to form our pleat. So it's all pinned and I'm right about to go and sew. I just wanted to show you that the pins all go through the line on this side, and then if you flip it over you can see that they're all aligned on this side. So we know that when we sew along this line it's going to follow those matching lines exactly, and the pleat's going to be the same size all the way down. So I've just sewn the pleat and you can see it followed the line, and when we open it up it currently is sticking out. We will press that later to the side, but if we do the next 2 pleats first, so there's our spacing, and our next pleat is going to be this large center pleat. So what we'll do is the same thing we did with this first pleat, but instead of having the chalked line, our second joining line is going to be the seam. So we take a pin and stick it in the side, and when you flip it over you'll see that there's the shoulder seam, and to hide this, if when you come through, make sure that it's on the inside of the pleat, so that when you come through that line of stitching and through the fold and that pin closes up the pleat, that your shoulder seam will be tucked inside the pleat there. Here's the middle pleat. You can see that I've gone through the seam through the front all along there, and if you flip it over to the other side, that all my pins run through the white line to form the end of the pleat. So if you look from the inside, you'll also notice, if you're careful, because obviously the shoulder seam is tucked inside, so when we've sewn it, it will be completely hidden. So just make sure that it's always been tucked up when you've pinned it all together. So that's 2 pleats done. The first smaller pleat on the front side, and then the larger pleat that's going to look like that on from the back bodice. And the next thing we're going to do is the final small pleat on the back, which we'll do exactly the same way as we did the front one, taking the 2 chalk markings and placing them together to make that small pleat, and then sewing down. I'll show you that when we sewed that center pleat there, you now can't see the shoulder seam because it's been tucked up inside. So I'm going to go and just finish sewing this up now, and then I'll show you when it's done. So that's our 3 pleats all sewn up. We have our 2 smaller ones on the outside, and then our central pleat, which is going to overlap them. And so we have to go and press them now to lie how we want them. The 2 side ones we're going to press down facing outwards, and then after we've pressed those 2, if we take this one and split it equally down the middle and press it like this, and you can start to see how your 3 pleats are going to look.